I'm Claudine Galloway with General Mills, and I am pleased to be joined today by Katie Fitzgerald, the Chief Operating Officer at Feeding America, an organization that we are so proud to support. Katie, we're all watching the news and we're seeing the long lines that people are waiting in their cars to safely receive food. Can you put this into perspective? How great is the need for food today?
The need is there are no other words for it besides immense, unprecedented. It's really truly nothing that we've ever seen in the history of food banking and sort of the modern charitable feeding system in this country. I think as of this morning, we have over 22 million people who have filed for unemployment, and we are for certain seeing many of those people. In fact, our food banks are telling us 40% of the people who are coming for emergency food assistance have never come to get that kind of assistance before. So it is both trying to meet the need originally of the 37 million Americans who were food insecure before COVID-19, and now having to address this incredible surge in need from those who have found themselves unable to feed their families all of a sudden overnight.
So how has Feeding America had to adjust to meet the high demand for food?
For us, we've been talking about this. You can sort of choose your moniker, whether it's a perfect storm or a triple whammy. We have had this incredible surge in need across the United States at the same time that we've also had a serious and significant reductions in the amount of food that is available for donation because of the tightness, which of course I don't need to tell you good folks at General Mills about in the supply chain. Our food banks have experienced anywhere from a 50 to 70% reduction in food donations. So what they're having to do is adjust, what we're having to do is adjust to the supply that is very different and the imbalance in the supply chain right now, as well as our operating model, which in a typical disaster of which we are unfortunately familiar with, but pretty good at doing, whether it's a hurricane or a tornado. In a typical disaster, the masses come. We invite in the volunteers, we bring food to the area that's in need. And in this case, of course, for good reason, people are wanting to stay home and should stay home. So we've also had a 70% decline in available volunteers at our food banks. In terms of adjustments, we are, I'm so proud of how we are innovating to meet the need. Our food bankers are showing up every day as essential organizations, despite the tremendous strain on our system. And they are doing all they can as we are to get whatever shelf-stable food we can. Of course, that's very limited right now. So we've really pivoted to try to take in as much food that's available from the food service industry, which of course is very available right now, but it's a bit complicated because our system is not set up to receive that level of perishable products. So we are doing everything from putting reefer trailers at food banks to helping them innovate around low contact distributions, to warehouses that are running 24 hours a day so that our order selectors can have the appropriate social distancing between one another when they're selecting orders. So there's tremendous innovation going on, but a really, really dire situation out there in communities.
Definitely. There are some heroic things happening at Feeding America. What are you the most proud of, Katie?
Oh gosh, I mean, I have to say I'm most proud of the people on the front lines. You know, I think they're just unsung heroes. They're people who are working in warehouses, who are doing distributions, who are volunteers all across this country. Our network is 200 food banks strong with 60,000 volunteer agencies, and many of those, well, most of those have a heavy volunteer level of involvement. And so folks are continuing to show up, putting themselves at an increased level of exposure to make sure that their friends and neighbors have food to eat. So I'm so grateful for that. But I also have to say, I am incredibly proud of and grateful for General Mills. The fact that you all have really hit sort of the home run of adding financial support to both Feeding America and to organizations across the globe. The fact that you're donating $5 million worth of product right off a production line into our tremendous food banks across this country. and then also that you're making available the opportunity for your employees to go out and serve and receive their pay and be a part of this solution in this incredible time in our country's history. It's one thing to have a partner who's with you on the good days, what we all are calling normal days. It's a whole nother thing to have a partner like General Mills that leans in even harder, gives even more, and just makes sure and lives out its commitment to making sure people in this country don't go hungry. We're so proud of you guys and so grateful for you.
Well, thanks, Katie. And I can say that we are so proud to partner with you to fight hunger today and in the past decades. Katie, my next question is about volunteers. Do local food banks need volunteers right now to help sort and distribute food?
They do, and it varies across the country how food banks are approaching this. So many food banks still have their volunteer centers open, but they are taking in fewer volunteers in order to ensure that those volunteers are able to comply with CDC guidelines for maintaining their health and safety. So that means smaller shifts, people separated by at least 6 feet, if not more, the use of conveyor belts and gloves and other personal protection equipment to make sure people are safe, and screening volunteers as they come in. So we are really grateful for anyone with General Mills and anyone across this country that's willing to go out and help food banks who are currently still accepting volunteers, because we certainly do need that help and want people to know that our food banks take their volunteers' health and safety incredibly seriously, and it is their primary priority. In addition to that, we have food banks who are entering into partnerships with organizations like Team Rubicon, which is a volunteer organization of former military veterans who are coming in and helping food banks. And then, of course, the National Guard is deployed in a number of food banks too, and that's a tremendous help for us right now.
That's great to hear about that volunteerism and all those efforts. What are some other things that people at home can do to help?
I think, I would be remiss if I didn't say people should continue to do all they can for themselves and their families to keep themselves safe and to protect the public health of their communities and to continue to follow those guidelines. In addition, financial donations do make a tremendous difference for your local food banks in your community, for Feeding America. All the dollars that we are raising, we are putting right out to our local food banks and to the agencies that they serve. And it's because right now, because of the tightness in the supply chain and the decline in donated food, food banks and Feeding America are having to turn to purchasing a great deal of the food that we're trying to bring to this problem. And that, of course, costs money. And so it is most useful if folks cannot and choose not to, for good reason, want to volunteer, that they consider making a financial donation to their local food bank or to Feeding America.
That makes sense. Well, Katie, I want to thank you for your time today, for sharing about the amazing and heroic efforts that Feeding America is making today and has been for decades to feed those facing hunger. We are so grateful for this partnership.
We again are so grateful for you, General Mills, leaders in the fight against hunger before this crisis hit our country, and leaders again in the fight against hunger in the midst of this crisis. We simply could not do this work without the tremendous support that you all provide. And I just hope every single one of you knows how deeply grateful we are. The impact of your gift is being felt by millions of Americans across this country and people who are showing up every day, knowing that there are others behind them and in support of them. So you're making a big difference, and we're really honored to work with you.
Thank you, Katie. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. You too. Well, we again are so grateful for you, General Mills, leaders in the fight against hunger before this crisis hit our country, and leaders again in the fight against hunger in the midst of this crisis. We simply could not do this work without the tremendous support that you all provide. And I just hope every single one of you knows how deeply grateful we are. The impact of your gift is being felt by millions of Americans across this country and people who are showing up every day, knowing that there are others behind them and in support of them. So you're making a big difference, and we're really honored to work with you.
Thank you, Katie. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. You too.
That was great. I'll go ahead and stop the recording here, and then we'll just
Katie, you're a pro.
make sure.
Oh, thanks. My hair was doing something.